Hey guys, as promised, here's the video on weathering boxcars here. So I've got three new rail boxcars here. We're gonna do weathering on all three of them, but I'm gonna show you basically just this one because I'm doing the same thing on all three of them. So to start out with, I hate this roof, all nice and shiny. So I'm basically just coloring it in with this sort of dirty brown paint. You can see my little jar there of it. It's basically just a bunch of brown and a whole bunch of other paints that get mixed in from my airbrush. When I have a little bit left over, I dump them in there, and I use it for doing the grime also on the cars. So we've painted the roofs, and next up I've got a highly diluted white, so probably about like 90% thinner and 10% white paint, and I spray the car completely with it just to dull down the yellow paint a little bit, give it a little bit of a faded look. Okay, next up is that same brown paint that I used for the roof. Again, pretty heavily weathered there. You can see I'm spilling it a little bit out of the airbrush there, but here's where I'm focusing in on sort of the bottom of the car, spraying that same brown again. This is my generic grime color there. Probably about like 50-50 for thinner to paint. And this is that first coat of grime that the cars get. Sometimes I even leave it at that point. Time to seal everything up with a matte, flat, clear coat. And we'll get to doing the decals. Now I've got a couple of decals already picked out that I had lying around. And as a matter of fact, I've gotten 3 more sheets of decals from Micro Scale. I'm using the Micro Set and Micro Sol here. First you use the Micro Set, which I swear I think it's just vinegar, and I don't know if it actually does anything here other than just gives a little bit of liquid there at the bottom for the decal to sort of float on. The real work gets done by the second red bottle there, the Micro Sol. So after looking at a bunch of prototype cars, a lot of the graffiti basically goes all the way down to the bottom. Not all the time, but for the most part, it's all the way to the very bottom of the car there. So I'm just positioning the decal here. And I've got to pay attention with these cars because of the posts, the ribbing there. And the decal has to kind of work its way around the top of those. So I'm just using that brush to kind of position it a little bit, and then we jump in with the Micro Sol. Micro Sol kind of dissolves the decal, so once you get this stuff on, there's no taking that decal off. Pretty generous amount there, cover the whole thing. Let it sit for a few seconds to, half a minute or so. It works pretty quick. And make sure I cover the entire decal, including trying to get some of it kind of underneath the decal too. So you could theoretically on a flat car just leave it as is and the decal would just sort of adhere itself completely to it, but because we've got those raised ribs, what I'm going to do is get some Q-tips here. And I'm going to start at one end of the decal and work my way across, just kind of pressing it in at the ribs there to get it good and flush. By now the Micro Sol's already softened it up, so you got to be very careful on this step. But you can see the decal there kind of moving around a little bit still because I'm working my way across the decal just to make sure that it gets a good snug fit. around the posts or any other little protrusions. And I think I do microsol, probably put like 3 layers on. Do the first one here, get it the decal positioned, put another one on, let it soften it up and touch up any spots I might have missed, and then do a final coat and just let it dry. If you didn't kind of pack in the, I guess that's the best way I can describe it, is packing in the decal there around the posts. The microsol does a pretty good job of having it adhere around the posts, but you still get a little bit of raising, which you can easily fix by just sort of cutting with an X-Acto blade right there by the posts, and then putting in a little bit more microsol. So we'll get our other decals on, including the other side, same way. And there you can see they've pretty much worked their way around all of the little protrusions. The rail down at the bottom where the door opens up. That one came out looking real nice there. It didn't break it or anything. This one here kind of got broken up a little bit. You could always touch that up with a little bit of black paint, but actually with all of the other weathering I'm going to do on it, you kind of going to cover up all those little cracks. So now we're going to start putting in some of the hand-drawn graffiti, and I'm using prototype pictures as a reference. And I use a couple of different colors here, using some black, kind of thinned down. Really need to have a nice sharp brush. That brush at the moment there wasn't quite sharp enough for me. I had to thin down the paint a little bit more, but I use red, white, black, brown. On a non-yellow car, I'd use yellow, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. And again, I'm working off of prototypes, but sometimes I just freelance it. A lot of times you'll see my initials on the car. All right, Vallejo model wash next. This is basically just a water-based muddy color. You could probably make your own, but the Vallejo tends to be nice and mixed, I guess. If I try to do my own, I get a lot of particles that don't dissolve completely. So this is just a muddy wash that I slather all over the entire car. And this helps to bring out some of the detail instead of doing a pin wash along the rails. This serves kind of the same function there. All right, now we start in with our enamels. So I have a sort of a dark brown one and then a light rust colored one. And I'm going to start just painting that along the rails and any other spots that I want to have rusted up. Before this step here, I applied yet another clear coat of flat clear coat over the entire model to seal in the decals. And again, I'm just kind of focusing in on the top rail where it's really rusty and the ladders on either side. The rail for the door there at the bottom is going to get pretty rusted up. Using a clean, dry brush there, just kind of brushing it down to get a little bit of streaking effect going. I do more depending on what I'm actually doing. This card, I didn't do a lot of streaking. Mainly just rusty spots. And here I'm going in with some of the light rust. It's sort of a bright rusty red orange color, focusing in on the same spots. And I basically do this sort of layering it over and over again. I keep going back and forth between those two, along with a little bit of brown paint and some of that grime paint that I used on the roof. I just keep working at it, going from one, letting it dry a little bit, and then switching over to the next color. And I get a little bit of sort of that grimy color. I end up putting it into sort of the center portions of the rusty spots. It almost makes an effect of like where the rust has almost become a sort of, I guess, a varnish sealant on the actual piece of metal, and has been rubbed by, maybe people going in and out of the door there. So along the door frame, where somebody is always grabbing it, gets a good dose of that. So next up, I use some Vallejo pigment powders here. I use this, what is it, earthen oxide, I think. It's sort of a reddish color. Just dabbing it along the roof here, pretty sporadic. And then I'll switch over to a sort of a bright orange color. I'm dabbing it into the spots that I just painted there too, so the powders were actually sort of set up with that. And any of the loose powder that's still on the car, I tend to kind of brush it a little bit, but it'll get sealed in with the next coat of clear coat. Brushing the trucks there just a little bit. I also have a white pigment, and I think I touched the trucks just a bit with that. I might use the white one a little bit more on a darker colored car, just to give it a little bit more faded effect. Here's this orange one. And again, the whole process here is really just layers, layers of different color that we're adding in. Just kind of messing with the roof here a little bit, tapping it into there. Depending on the car, I'll vary exactly what I'm doing. I might focus in more a little bit on the roof and make sort of squared off patches on the roof. But this car here is just all completely rusted up. It's an older railbox car that's been in service for a while, so I'm just going to keep the roof completely rusted up. All right, so again, back to some of the brown-ish paint there, filling in a few spots that kind of got washed out there, putting in a few little nicks and scratches and dings that have broken the paint and caused it to get rusty. And I'll do this process, like I said, a couple times. I'll keep going back and forth between the different colors here again, and just adding it until it looks just about right. The whole general idea is to have sort of the darkest colors in the center, and then like this bright rusty color around the perimeter of whatever rusty scratch or spot you have. And if you're not like me and want a car that's somewhat rusty but not too rusty, you have to be careful because it's easy to overdo it. Take a break and step back after doing a little bit. See if you like the results. I tend to be pretty heavy-handed, and I like my cars, like I said in a prior video, looking like they're ready for the scrapyard. You can see there I'm taking a little bit of time just touching up some of those little spots. Going back and forth. So the final technique here, and you can use it with any color, I just happen to be using the that rusty oxide. Get a kind of stiff brush there, and I'm just sort of flicking the paint onto the model, and that's just going to give me a little bit of sort of a splatter effect for really tiny little spots that would be hard to do with just a regular brush. So here's kind of the final result. You can see I'm pretty happy with it, and I've only got like 10 more cars to go. This one's pretty grimy. Really like the way it came out around the doorways there. You can see that dark patches inside of the rust there. Really looks like the paint has completely come off, and you're seeing bare metal there that's had the oxidized layer on it. So that is how I do it, and it's not the only way that it can be done, but that's how I do it. Hope you enjoy that, guys. Hit the thumbs up button if you did, or the thumbs down if you didn't. And if you have any questions, post them in the comments on the video. And if you're new and want to follow along, go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell button to get notified when I do new videos on my Southern California HO scale layout. Till next time, guys, take care.